Madhav NALAPAT from Manipal University, India. I also would like to express on behalf of Ambassador Zheng, the chairman of Public Foundation, his regret not being able here to receive you in person. Right now he's in Europe. Yeah. So if I remember correctly, this is your second visit to our foundation. And our last meeting is last May. So during that meeting, you inspired us with your valuable perspective on various regional issues, and also you also predict President Ma will be re-elected.
That was a very easy prediction.
And it did happen, so that's very impressive. So today we are very honored and delighted to have you here again to share your wisdom by delivering us a speech on the Indian-U.S. relation and its implication on East Asia security. So before I start the meeting, allow me to introduce you my colleague here. So on my right is Dr. Zhang, Mingyong Zhang. She's the Executive Director of Chinese Taipei APEC Study Center. She's an old friend of yours. And on her right is Professor Zheng Ma from National Defense University. He's the expert of PLA. And on his right is Mr. Yang Mi-sun, Vice President of Private Foundation. On my left, Dr. Guan Yao-zhen, the Research Fellow of the Institute of International Relations in National Zhenji University. On his right, Mr. Damian Lin, Vice President of Private Foundation. And the others is my colleague of Private Foundation. So again, welcome to our foundation this afternoon. So would you like to give us a remark to opening this session?
So I just want to say I'm very happy to come back to Taiwan, because I sincerely believe that the Taiwanese people have made amazing progress in societally, culturally, and so many ways. Culturally, I believe Taiwan has protected and preserved a 5,000-year-old culture much better than the mainland has. And I was happy to see that when I wrote that in an article for Global Times 2 or 3 days ago, the Global Times actually published that line, that Taiwan has protected Chinese culture better than the mainland has. I expected it to be probably removed, but it was not removed. They kept that. It's you're a remarkable country, and you have made amazing progress in technology, in science, in economic progress, social development. And each time I come here, I find the process of democratization is becoming faster and better. I define a democracy as a state in which the government is afraid of the people. And an authoritarian structure, the people are afraid of the government. I don't think anybody in Taiwan is afraid of the government. If there is a Taiwanese who is afraid of the government, I have not met that Taiwanese. So I'm definitely not in this visit. So I'm very delighted to be here. And I'm also delighted to be here during a rainy day, because in my culture, rain is prosperity, rain is good luck, and rain is something which we really welcome. So that I've come on a rainy day is also a good sign. So I just want to say I'm very happy to come here. I'm delighted to be in Taiwan and delighted to be in the Prospect Foundation.
Thank you, Professor. So shall we proceed to your speech?
I would just like to make a few observations and points regarding the United States-India-US relations. It's a very, very huge topic, and it covers a very, very significant period of time. So I just want to begin by a concept which has been there since the 1930s, which was initiated by Winston Churchill, and that is the concept of the Anglosphere. the Anglosphere is the group of English-speaking countries. Now, during Winston Churchill's time, the Anglosphere was defined as people who were of the same race as the British or European race. So he defined the Anglosphere as being in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the United States and the UK. So for Churchill, Anglosphere was a racial concept. But the point of the matter is that one has to widen the sphere of the Anglosphere. If you look at a magazine called New Criterion, you might see an article of mine called the 21st Century Anglosphere. And my point there was, it is not the, it is not the physical blood that is important, but the mental blood. So you can be physically different, but you can be mentally the same. For example, we can be authoritarian, whichever ethnicity we come from. We can be democratic, whichever ethnicity we come from. So a 21st century Anglosphere must bring together English-speaking people, not on the basis of blood, which is the Churchillian concept, which frankly is a racist concept of Nazi Germany. And I was quite disappointed that Winston Churchill adopted a Nazi German concept. But the blood of the mind, which is a much purer concept, and in that, India is very much a part of a 21st century Anglosphere. The English-speaking, in India, the population that speaks English is roughly about 300 million. If you look at the census figures, you're not going to catch that, because census figures catch the mother tongue. Now, if a census person asks me what is my mother tongue, I will say Malayalam, which is the tongue, which is the language I follow in Kerala. So according to census, I don't speak English. Of course, a lot of people will say I don't speak English because the kind of English I speak they may not like. But the reality is that the census figures do not capture the fact that more than 300 million Indians speak English. And over the last 15 years especially, there has been substantial public demand for teaching of English. Many state governments in India were, in the government schools, they did not allow English to be taught. They only allowed the local language to be taught. But because of pressure even from the underprivileged, from the poor people, especially from the poor people, they wanted their children to learn English. So today a lot of government schools are also teaching English. And English is now increasingly entering the curriculum of the Indian state. With the result that we are likely to cross 500 million people speaking English, I would say, well before the next 15 years is over. That is, 500 million people are going to speak English in India well before the next 15 years is over. Of course, I want to add here something about Taiwan, and it is that I do honestly believe that Taiwan needs to be 100% literate in English. That one problem that is there in Taiwan is the fact that English is really not spread very much in the local population. And English is not just it's not a language, it's not a culture system. It is actually a weapon for improvement of the self and a weapon for economic advancement. We don't see English as a cultural totem. We see English as a weapon for our own advancement. And I think in Taiwan, it is very feasible for you to have a program which makes everybody in Taiwan speak English. And if that happens, I think the progress of Taiwan is going to be much more. Because, as the Prospect Foundation is dealing with cross-strait relations. But the reality is, your external shores are the whole world. Your economy is so big, your economy is so diverse, your skills are so multitudinous that you are on the shores of Latin America, you're on the shores of Africa, you're on the shores of the whole of Asia, of Europe, everywhere in the world. So in a sense, it's an international island. It's not just cross-strait that is important, but cross-world that is important. And to go into that cross-world situation, I would say it is very, very important that Taiwan join India and Singapore and Malaysia and South Africa as part, and Kenya as part of the 21st century Anglosphere, the community of English-speaking countries in the world. This is not a community which is led by England, it is not a community led by America, but it's a community where the English language is spread as a weapon of economic and social progress. Because those who, if you look at the Arab countries, for example, those who read English have access to entirely different sets of information than what they would read in their own language. Again, pardon me for going a little important on the question of language, because chemistry is very important in dealing between human states. In the case of China, for example, about 3 years ago, I gave a speech in China in which I warned China that they are going to face a significantly heightened terrorist threat. And the reason for that was many Chinese are now learning Arabic. Many people from the Hui nationality, from Xinjiang, etc., are going to Arab countries and learning Arabic. And in Arabic, it is very easy to find literature which says, you eat pork, it is anti-godly. To drink wine is anti-godly. You know, to have women going around with showing their legs is anti-godly. So then, many of these writings teach you to hate a country where you people eat pork, they drink wine, and the women dress in a reasonably free way. So I said, people in China who have been reading only Chinese languages do not get this kind of message. But once you read Arabic, you get some very nasty messages about your culture. And some of these people are going to come back with those messages, are going to believe those messages, and you're going to have a security problem on your hands. Which, 3 years ago I said that. I think more and more it is becoming a reality today in China. The vast expansion in the knowledge of Arabic is certainly creating a problem in China. But Arabic and English are, of course, going to very great languages, but of course entirely different. Why I want to say that is that the United States and India share a common root. Both were colonies of Britain. Both were colonies of the United Kingdom. The difference, of course, was the United States managed to shake off the British in a very short period of time, and we took about 200 years to shake off the British. The Americans were much better at shaking off the British than we were. Or possibly they were not so interested in America as they were in India, because India was the jewel in the crown. But both of us were colonies of the British. Both of us are the two largest English-speaking countries in the world. America has got about roughly about 300 million plus people who speak English. There are large numbers of Americans who don't speak English, who speak Spanish and who speak some other languages. But overall, about 300 million Americans speak English, about 300 million Indians speak English. So these are the two large Anglosphere countries, far bigger than the United Kingdom. Far bigger than the United Kingdom. So this is a very important root that actually is bringing India and America together, the English language. It is not, we can talk about so many geopolitical factors, but this factor of language is there, because an Indian goes to America, he normally speaks English, he can manage in America very, very well. American comes to India, almost anywhere in India he goes, the English language is there. So it becomes a very strong bond between India and America in the cultural and people-to-people sphere. Education, etc. becomes a very, very strong bond. So that's point number one. Point number two, of course, there are clear strategic convergences between India and the United States. Now, there is a common threat of terrorism. There is a common threat of a balance of power in every continent. I think the Americans are now accepting the fact that they can no longer be the dominant power everywhere. In fact, continent by continent, they are now retreating, and they are becoming one of a group of big powers and acting in concert. The good thing about President Obama, I think he has publicly acknowledged that the United States can no longer dominate a system or dominate a set of institutions, but it has to give way to others, and it has to acknowledge this kind of situation. Now, again, your Prospect Foundation dealing with China, dealing with cross-state. I'm an old friend of China. And I'm a great admirer of China, the Chinese people, and I would like to say that I am also an admirer of the Chinese Communist Party. I find the people whom I have met are people of outstanding caliber. They keep their word. They are very good they're extremely good people. But I want to say that I think China, to some extent, may be repeating some of the mistakes of the United States. Take the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO. The United States wants to dominate every institution that's a member of. If it's a member of APEC, it wants to dominate APEC. If it's a member of NATO, it wants to dominate NATO. If it's a member of WTO, it wants to run the WTO. The Chinese, the institutions that are being set up by the Chinese, they are the same.